Shalom, everyone. I want to do this video based on a geographical facts that pertains to biblical writings that address the earth. And let me start here in Bereshit or Genesis, the 10th chapter, and the 25th verse. And to Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Yoktan or Yoktan. So let's deal with in the days of Peleg. So here we see Peleg. And in the Hebrew called D dictionary, we're going to look up 6389. Here we see Peleg. It says Peleg, earthquake. This is what his name signifies, earthquake. Because we just read and to Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided. We just read that. So now, let's deal with that. The dividing of the earth. Let's read about Pangea. It says Pangea, a vast continental area or supercontinent comprising all the continental crust of the earth, postulated to have existed in the late Paleozoic and Mesozoic times before breaking up into Gondwana and Laurasia. Pangea. Now, this is supposed to be Pangea, but we're about to expose the deception today. See, we just read. It pictures the earth during the late Paleozoic, when all the land was clumped into one contiguous mass called the supercontinent, Pangea. So this is Pangea. The problem with Pangea is Pangea wants to give you the impression that China, Russia, that we've always seen down here connected to Africa, is all the way up here, away from Africa. So the powers that be really want to give you the impression that Asia or Eurasia was not connected to Africa, or what we call Africa. Now, notice we have the United States connected directly to Africa. That's accurate. You have South America directly connected to Africa. That's correct. You see, you got India connected to Africa, Australia, Antarctica. You can see how the earth was in the days of Peleg until you get here. And this deception is just too obvious to pass up. Because in the maps that we've seen today, you have Russia that's down here, China that's over here, that's connected to what's called Afro-Eurasia. Let's look at this one. It says map of Eurasia and Africa in 650 CE. Because you see how it's formulated? You got Africa, connected. You have Europe, let's see. Okay, let's see. Here it is. You have Russia. So you have Africa. Connected to Asia. You have Europe. You have Greenland over here. Arctic Ocean. But you see Eurasia, Africa, Asia, Eurasia, Afro-Eurasia. You got Russia. So we see the deception that Pangea is trying to deliver. Because Pangea is scientific. And in the scientific world, you have to have something that contradicts the word of the Most High to deceive the masses. Because this is more feasible as opposed to this. When this landmass was down here, China was down here, and it was all connected. But that's the deception. But I want to also make this point that in antiquity, because I'm about to go into another part of the series about early man and how the cultures were spread so rapidly. Because as you see here, when you talk about whatever cultures that went on here in what we call Africa, could have very well went on here in the United States. So if you see Kush in Africa, you could have seen Kush in the United States at this particular time. This is when the world was one landmass. You could have seen Kush in Canada. You could have seen any of these ancient cultures in a lot of different regions simply because you could walk from one continent to the other. Right here on the east coast of the United States, of North America, you could walk straight into the west coast of Africa. But for some strange reason, they had to move Russia and China all the way up here. This is not accurate. with what we've been looking at, or been accustomed to. And like I said, I'm trying to go back into this series so I can show how these different cultures that we only think that's in Africa, certain parts of Asia, was right here in America also before the divide. So in the days of Peleg, the world was divided literally. So when we think about the world dividing, these continents were a lot closer and they drifted this far apart over a course of time. So even after they were divided, Peleg lived a long time. So it says in the days of Peleg, for in the days, I'm sorry, the name of one of the sons of Eber was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided. So this is what we're looking at today. This is biblical. So when you see cultures, always remember this, when you see cultures in parts of Africa or India, and you have these same or the same evidence of cultures in the United States, that's because the world was one landmass at one time. This is a great illustration, but this I cannot agree with, that Russia was all the way up here, because it's not accurate what we're looking at today. For some reason, the powers that be or mankind does not want to be directly connected to Africa. And that's part of this, the racist energy that's in the historical community. So now that I've touched on this subject, I can go into the 11th chapter of Bereshit, knowing that by this being explained, a better understanding should go forth. So, as I said before, we need to talk about some of these deceptions that mankind is leaving in the historical narrative. because science would have never known that the earth was one landmass until they read this in Bereshit. And a lot of the so-called discoveries that the powers that be claim that are discoveries, they were discovered in the pages of this Bible first, where the pages of the Bible was combed, and then they had discoveries. And this is something that the scientific and historical world has been doing for a very long time. So that's why there's so much confusion and deception in history, because it's not being told correctly. So if you liked the content so far, subscribe, push the like button. And with this, I shall bid you shalom, peace, and prosperity.